Dear Lord, please bless this gathering of fellow Rotarians today. Open our eyes to see those in need and give us the strength and wisdom to serve our community as we should, both as a group and also individually. Help us to lift the burdens of others while we maintain the dignity of humankind. Soften our hearts to be sensitive and loving as we serve together as Rotarians. We ask this day to please bless this food we have or are about to receive to the nourishment of our bodies and us to thy service. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you, Becky. For visiting Rotarians and guests, we've got past President Hal Stevenson. Hal? Oh, I'm sorry. Grace is going to do it. Great, come on up.
Already taken advantage of the father position.
That's right. Grace Stevenson is going to give, our new member is going to give our welcoming Rotarians and guests.
Hello everyone, didn't expect to be up here today, but we have two visiting Rotarians from other clubs, Wade Schubert from the West Columbia Rotary Club and Lindsay Agostini from Spring Valley Rotary Club. And if you have a guest, you can stand up and introduce them.
It's Donna. Okay. This is my guest, Oda from Iraq, and he's visiting. He's a PhD student at the University of South Carolina.
Hello, I'm Lee Lumpkin, and I have my great friend Radinko Pavlovich from Columbia Classical Ballet, and we're at the arts table.
I actually have a guest. I'm Mason Hardy, their club president currently, but I have with me Nicole Crook. She's with Palmetto Insurance Group, and she's a prospective member.
I actually have a guest too. It's two guests. It's Miss Karen Aaron Palami and her husband John Aaron Palami from Karen's Smoking Kitchen and Catering. Hey, Miss Karen.
Welcome all guests and busy Rotarians. Thank you for being here today to hear our esteemed mayor speak. Health and happiness is going to be Russ Bell.
Thank you, President Mason. A few items of news. Kishore, our good friend who helps us with photography and everything else, he's been out because his brother is ill, and he's doing the family thing and helping taking care of him. And Libby Gover would be here today to introduce Mayor Benjamin, but our husband is having eye surgery. So keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers. The CART committee would like for me to share this CART message for today. Alzheimer's is the third leading cause of death in the United States, and the only top 10 deadly disease without a treatment or cure. And as Rotarians, we're doing our part. I'd like for you to note the lovely blue bucket on your table, and if you could remember that. And if you would like, you could make out a check to the CART fund, and that would ensure that your contribution is tax deductible. A few ideas today. What happens when parts of speech go to a bar? And you may have seen this. And as our esteemed coach Muschamp, you might recognize this concept. As he says this almost every time I hear him on the radio. At the end of the day, a cliche walks into a bar. Fresh as a daisy, cute as a button, and sharp as a tack. I'm not sure if he said those last three parts of that. A figure of speech literally walks into a bar and ends up getting figuratively hammered. Hyperbole totally rips into this insane bar and absolutely destroys everything. A synonym strolls into a tavern Now just let these kind of soak in just a little bit, I'm sure. A bar was walked into by the passive voice. And the last one of these, thank goodness, right? The past, present, and future walked into a bar and it was tense. There we go. Ooh, boy, finally. Okay, so last week Jimmy Derrick had health and happiness, and he shared with you that he had a birthday in July. I too had a birthday in July. And one of the things, any of you who have a birthday in the middle of the year, like June, July, August, you get 2 times a year to get very reflective. And I was more reflective than usual because this was my 60th birthday. And so I thought a lot about, my goals and am I achieving everything I would like, and sort of reset, similar to New Year's resolution type idea. That was very serious, but then I found some things on the internet that were somewhat more humorous. You know you're old when you turn down the lights to be economical instead of romantic. Old age when happy hour is a nap. Getting older has some benefits. Call it a senior moment, and you can get away with pretty much anything. Okay, and here's one for all of us, and you guys, that are younger than me, I don't really envy you, but the best part about being 60 is that you did most all of your stupid stuff before the internet. And cell phone, yeah, everybody has your own camera nowadays. You know you're 60 when a kid you used to babysit is now your lawyer, dentist, or accountant. You know you're 60 when you have a party and the neighbors don't even realize it. And then the last one of these, you know you're 60 when you're in an elevator when your favorite song comes on. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great week.
Thank you, Russ. I have been in the elevator and heard a rendition of a Hootie and the Blowfish song before, and I thought that was very interesting and telling of my age. He mentioned the cart buckets. Y'all, please be generous with those with your loose change or the checks. Please finish up eating. But when you're finished eating, remember we are in the city of Columbia and we do want to wear masks. Mayor Benjamin, I hand pick this up every Monday and I remind everybody to put on their mask. City ordinances. So please put those on when you're finished eating. We held a Discover Rotary meeting this morning at 11:30 for prospective members who wanted to learn more about Rotary. We had 2 folks join us today. Remember that membership is our lifeblood of this organization. We need new members to keep us invigorated and doing more things and getting more active participation. We'd like to encourage everybody to bring a prospective member to the Discover Rotary meeting, which is always the first Monday of the month. However, next month in September, we are not meeting the first month because it's Labor Day, so it'll be on September 14th will be the next Discover Rotary meeting here at 11:30 at SeaWorld. We just did it on the screen this morning. Hope you all have completed your surveys, your online surveys, so let us know how you'd like to participate in active committees this year. Please pay your club invoices if you have not done so already. Checks are welcome at the Monday meetings. Members of the media, I want to remind you that you're not able to ask questions during the meeting, but you can afterwards. The meeting questions are just for members, and we even have members who are members of the media. They can ask questions. So now, without further delay, we want to have plenty of time for our esteemed mayor to come speak. So we're going to have President-elect Catherine Davis come and introduce the mayor.
Since being elected mayor in a record turnout election in April of 2010, Mayor Steve Benjamin has made it his mission to create in Columbia the most talented, educated, and entrepreneurial city in America. His service in Columbia started back in 1990 when he served as student body president at the University of South Carolina, later becoming the Student Bar Association president at the USC School of Law. At 29 years old in 1999, Benjamin was appointed to Governor Jim Hodges' cabinet as director of the state's second largest law enforcement agency, the Department of Probation, Parole, and Pardon Services. Mayor Benjamin has continued his service in the community and serving on numerous boards for nonprofit organizations such as the Columbia Urban League, Benedict College, the Greater Columbia Chamber of Commerce, and as a founding board member of the Eau Claire Promise Zone. He also served as a founding member of Choose Children First and Chief Legal Counsel for Midlands Crime Stoppers. In addition to serving as mayor of Columbia, Mayor Benjamin also serves as president of the United States Conference of Mayors and as chairman for Municipal Bonds for America. He teaches a class at the University of South Carolina Honors College titled Columbia, South Carolina, Building a Great City. And he's also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi and Sigma Phi Phi fraternities. Mayor Benjamin is married to the Honorable DeAndrea Gist Benjamin, who is Chief Administrative Judge for South Carolina's 5th Judicial Circuit. They both are proud parents of 2 daughters, Bethany, who's 12, and Jordan Grace, who's 10. Please welcome our esteemed mayor and honorary member of our club, Steve Benjamin.
Thanks, Kat.
You're welcome.
Thank you for reading my bio just like I wrote it. You always like that. I always appreciate that. And thank you for your tenacity.
Yes.
If you guys know how many times I got text messages or phone calls or emails from Catherine Davis, you know exactly why I'm here. She does not take no for an answer. And she literally is right across the street from my in-laws, so I can't avoid her either. So it was going to happen one way or the other. It's an honor to be here with you all as I look around this room and see so many friends and the people who actually make Columbia work. I hope you all are envious of my mask I got from General Biggs Beagle at Fort Jackson. The same mask they give to all the recruits at Fort Jackson. I've been sporting it. It's one of the few that actually fits this big head, Nathan. You can appreciate that. We're living in historic times, y'all. Historic times. As we face the greatest pandemic since 1918, the greatest economic disruption certainly during an election year since 1932, and maybe the greatest social unrest around race in our communities since 1968, all wrapped up into a few months in 2020. We are living in some incredibly challenging times. Someone was doing a Zoom call. First of all, who has Zoom fatigue? Anyone here got Zoom fatigue? Okay. I figured that was one of the reasons I had to come here today. No one wanted to do another Zoom call. On a Zoom call last week, and someone likened it to your house being on fire, and someone coming up to you and say, hey, by the way, your house is on the sinkhole, it's sinking as we speak. And then another person say, hey, do you see that tornado coming down the street right now? All happening literally at the same time. The world is facing some challenges, but there are some that are uniquely American. The pandemic has claimed hundreds of thousands of precious lives. We thought we saw some incredibly challenging numbers back in the first quarter. We watched the American gross domestic product drop by 4.8%. We of course saw some amazingly challenges outlined in the news last week. We watched the U.S. economy contract at a 32.9% annual rate during the second quarter, the worst drop on the record according to the BEA. As we work through this economic crisis that is was precipitated and caused by a public health crisis. And I think that's a crisis, and I think that's important. I may say that a few times as we or work our way through our brief presentation. I want to make sure I have some time to answer questions. Mason, I kind of got lost in those instructions as I look at John Monk on this side and Andy Shane on this side. Members can ask questions?
They get to ask questions. It's part of member privilege.
Okay. I was trying to piece that together as you were laying it out there. So
The guy in the back is filling out an application very quickly.
I'm sure. It's important to understand that we are indeed dealing with an economic crisis that's caused by a public health crisis. And that if, in fact, we do what we're supposed to do and help get our arms around the public health crisis, the economic crisis will work itself out. And that's why I will tell you, as I look through the rules that you laid out for this event, it really appeared very noteworthy that the Rotary Club is going through some such significant steps to try and make sure that if, in fact, we were to gather, that we were taking care of those who may need to view this over Facebook, and certainly those who are going to be here. It was important we did this the right way. That as we understand the importance of social distancing, is also in these challenging times in which we live, to also do everything we can to promote social cohesion and the role that the Rotary Club and other essential organizations that play a role not just on the world front, but essential roles as pillars of our American democracy and our form of government. I believe it's so important. I will say congratulations to all the lucky Clemson fans that are going to be safe from that butt whipping this year. It's amazing how I see you, Rusty, over there. It's amazing how the pandemic works to the benefit of some people. The Tigers can chalk this one up as a draw. I'm making a couple of observations and then happy to take some questions. There's still so much more that we have yet to learn about the pandemic. Some of you saw the disturbing reports of young people. Some people believe that young people, at one point, young people were immune. That obviously they're much more resilient than us older people. And yes, I've started to hear some of my favorite tunes on the radio, on the elevator as well. So I understand that, but we saw the disturbing reports of the YMCA camp out of Georgia. 344 folks at the camp, 260, most of them children infected. We are facing a menace that does not respect borders. It doesn't respect authority. It is a contagion that aggressively seeks hosts. And I do firmly believe, and that's the approach we've taken as a city, that the decisions that we make will determine our destiny. That the quicker and more affirmatively we ask, investing in good data, using that data to give us good intelligence, and use that intelligence to then create good policy that keeps us away from the red and the blue and the politics, and only focus on our one true north. Our one true north is to preserve human life. That's it. If we do that, then everything else will begin to migrate back towards our normal sooner rather than later, without the incredible carnage that we've seen of over 150,000 deaths, over 1,700 of our fellow South Carolinians lost. I do believe that the real test of leadership in this great country has always been our response to a crisis. We've stood the test of time for the last 240 plus years by standing up for the right things at the right times. And I believe that we need to take this on as a war. As it relates to a city, and I say this as mayor of this city, and certainly as a student of cities, as the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors just over a year ago, we have to also observe how this is changing the world in which we live. We've watched this incredible migration of people all across the globe back towards urban cores. Great dynamic urban cores supported by a wonderful arts infrastructure. I love my arts table back there. I'm not sure I've seen women Rodenko at the same table in a long time. And of course, Lee right between them. I love it. Amazing places, Matt, that City Center Partnership and others have helped to build, where density was key. What does this mean as we go forward, as we grapple through this pandemic? We've watched 85.5% of our citizens now living in cities and metropolitan economies. 89% of the jobs are there. 92% of America's GDP is created in these cities and metropolitan areas. What does it mean as we go forward, Nathan, as to how cities in these metro areas that drive the American economy by far? What does it mean for our economic future if we can't get our act together, a thoughtful and functional and bipartisan federal government that then supports a state government that ought to act more like our local communities than it does Washington, D.C., and then local folks who just need to be able to block and tackle to make sure that we're continuing to create the environment where this natural organism, the city government, that reflects the values that we all hold dear. How do we continue to build cities that serve as a platform for human potential? How do you capture this dynamism and this discussion around race and policing and structural reform? How do you turn this pain and this passion into real progress that brings people together in thoughtful ways that don't reduce us to fighting battles over bumper sticker lines like defund the police, but actually talk about what can we do to reimagine creating safer communities. There's so much work that has to be done. I won't go over the statistics. We all see them on the news channel of our choices each and every single day, and I would challenge everyone to maybe every once in a while turn the channel to the other stations. Or maybe even turn them all off for a week or so. It's amazing how cable news sometimes seems to be maybe Twitter on steroids and on view, and we've found ways to monetize conflict and often highlighting the extremes and often talking about ways in which people come together. I would encourage you to go for the data, go for the facts, and think about the way in which we all play a role, again, in making sure that this country remains the shining star of the world, which I do believe that we are. I recognize that we all have a common role in serving as the constant architects of building this more perfect union, that this country is far from perfect, but our goal has always been to try and make it better every single day. We do that through service, we do that through sacrifice. It is not an easy battle. We started early in our response to the pandemic. On March 1st, we called together our very first coronavirus task force meeting, a goal to try and pull together not only intergovernmental response, but an intersectoral response, listening to public health officials, listening to scientists, getting good data, and trying to act accordingly. A coalition of representatives from area health agencies, public safety agencies, local government leaders, business leaders, healthcare providers, and other organizations, of course, including our school districts. Trying at that very early stage, when we knew so little about the virus, trying to make sure that we were sharing best practices and sharing as much information as possible. We met several times since then. Many of you remember we launched early on our Resilient Columbia Economic Sustainability Plan, in which we identified $6.5 million as part of an emergency economic package designed to help our small businesses survive the pandemic, as well as to bolster up our law enforcement, to make sure that whatever was to come, we were prepared to do so. We hadn't thought about what might happen the last weeks of May, but certainly it proved to be fortuitous that we were prepared in fortifying our law enforcement for the response to the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Through the Resilient Columbia Economic Sustainability Plan, we put $1.4 million in the pockets of small businesses all across this community, 320 small businesses. We started with a seed grant of $250,000 to senior resources, another $500,000 to other nonprofits meant to stand them up during this very difficult time. Again, understanding that our small businesses are essential. We have to make sure that we support them. We're seeing numbers upwards of maybe 1/3 of all restaurants across the country will not survive until the end of the year. But also understanding there are small businesses that, small nonprofits and others that provide the critical infrastructure of our community. Senior Resources alone on that small grant did a great job of pulling together other resources to feed over 500,000 meals to food insecure seniors throughout the Midlands over the last several months. We continue to work with a number of different small businesses and nonprofits on behalf of the community. I will say this, as we go forward, there's still so much work to do. And I think, again, there's no better time than a time like this as we work through these crises to try to think about where we want to be, not just in 20 years but maybe in the next 10 years, in 4 years. How do you cast this sail so that you can catch all the winds of change that are before us around economic recovery, around social justice, around a thoughtful, data-driven approach to dealing with the pandemics of today and those that may come down the road. So we are establishing a commission on Columbia's future, one that will allow us to accelerate our response and think thoughtfully about ways in which, again, we can promote the same type of social cohesion we see here in this room, pulling people together at times that often may appear to be our most desperate times to work on a collective future. It's against the backdrop of federal funding not only being challenging for some, but watching state and local funding also dry up. Representative, I guess the surplus was $1.9 billion, now it's $200 million, I believe. We lopped off $34 million in the local budget. We're going to see state and local budgets over the next several years drop about $1 trillion. $1 trillion. So the government closest to the people that provide the most essential services. We're going to have some challenging times going forward. So we're going to have to be much more strategic, much more thoughtful, much more collaborative in how we meet the needs of the community going forward. We're going to have to be very thoughtful about disparities that exist throughout our community. Someone referenced the pandemic as a great X-ray of American society, and highlighted the fact that we have a number of broken bones right now that we have to begin to try and heal, whether it's around our healthcare delivery infrastructure, our response to pandemics, the challenges that exist historically along the lines of race, the challenges of poverty, and those who seek to rise up out of the bottom quintiles of our economy, how that has become much more challenging every single decade since the 1940s here in this country. We've got some great work to do. How do we indeed build a pandemic resilient society and a pandemic resilient economy? I'll say this now, I'll be prepared to take my seat after taking some questions. I do believe that probably the greatest lesson that I've learned, and hopefully that many of us may have learned over the last several months, is that there's great strength in humility. There's great strength in knowing that you don't have all the answers. There's great strength as we all work our way not just through this pandemic, as we work through all the social challenges that we face as a community. There's great strength in understanding that we all suffer from some degree of experiential blindness, that we all bring different biases to a situation, different biases to a table. We all do. And we oftentimes look at data that confirms those biases as opposed to looking outside of the world in which we live. I've come to a point in my life where, and I hope that you are too, where I recognize that two people of goodwill can look at the very same thing and see it very differently. So how is it you can facilitate conversations that actually allow people to find a common place from which we can move forward together? I would tell you, as you speak to friends and as you speak to your elected officials, do not confuse confidence with competence. okay? Oftentimes people will speak very boldly about what they think. Ask them, dig a little bit deeper into not only what they know, but how they know it. Ask them for data, ask them for answers, ask them for a plan as to how you can move the community forward. At this point in our time, we're gonna have to be a little more thoughtful about not just reinventing things, but also reimagining how we move our communities forward. I will start again, as I know I see some of the most successful and thoughtful business leaders in our community here. I see some incredible entrepreneurs. Again, restating the fact that you can't be pro-business without being pro-public health. Let's do our very best to make sure we use good data to make thoughtful public health decisions that allow us to get past this pandemic and reclaim some semblance of normalcy. And in the process, that save lives. That's got to be our goal. The preservation of human life has got to be our true norm. So, thank you for having me here today. Thank you not just for the Rotary Club, but the incredible things that each and every one of you does in your individual lives. Wish you peace and prosperity. Pray for good health for you and in your families. And I remain confident that as Colombians, as South Carolinians, as Americans, as children of God, we can get through this together. So thank you. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here today. I really like your jacket.
No, thank you.
My question is, you mentioned that we have to think outside the box and kind of be more creative. Columbia itself as a city is very interesting for me because we have a lot of government, we have a lot of university, and then we have a lot of churches. What are you going to do as the mayor to help make sure Columbia withstands this as a lot of these businesses start closing? What are we going to put into these buildings moving forward?
Sure. No, I'm not sure what we're going to put in the buildings moving forward. I think that obviously we rely heavily on the private sector to fill that need, but we speak very clearly to kind of the burden and the blessing of Columbia, in that we are the seat of state government. Victory starts here at Fort Jackson, the Army's largest training base in the world. The university and a significant number of colleges and other universities here in the city. And because of men like Strom and Fritz and so many others, we have a significant amount of federal investment. You add in that the nonprofits and churches and hospitals. I want to say that the amount of area, the literal square miles not on the tax rolls in the city, it exceeds about 70% of the city, so it is significant.
Yeah.
And as a result, it has led to a situation where a disproportionate amount, you add in the challenges of Act 388 and others, a disproportionate amount of tax burden on small businesses, all businesses, but small businesses in particular in the city, makes it downright onerous. And that's why for the past 10 years, we've not raised taxes in the city of Columbia. We've decreased our tax millage by 12 mills, and we will hold the line there because I do believe that our citizens are overtaxed. I do believe, and that's why I spoke to that. It may have seemed maybe a bit academic when I referenced it earlier, that we're going to have to go back and look at our entire economic development strategy, because it has been focused very intentionally on urban development in the urban core, surrounded by suburbs, and obviously you can be in the rural, hunting for boar, fishing for bass, whatever it might be, but recognizing that one building in downtown pays more in property taxes that helps pay for the various services that we provide than a 400-unit subdivision on the outskirts of town. So if our goal is providing high-quality services to the people of the city with the lowest amount of tax burden, then the biggest bang for our buck is to focus on urban development in the urban core that obviously with a higher tax rate of 6% in the millage, it helps float the entire boat. So that has been our goal. If in fact the pandemic has the converse effect of dissuading density, then what does that do to the larger argument? And I think that's something we're going to have to spend some time talking about. There are some really exciting conversations going on as we evaluate our economic development strategy as a city-specific, recognizing the role that we play here as a region. Our goal as a water and sewer provider for the region helps facilitate development in both Richland and Lexington County. That's not on the state tax rolls, but certainly as an enterprise fund helps fuel development all across the region. So there's some exciting discussions going on around that. I do believe that the challenges specifically as it relates to a number of our small businesses is unique. Small businesses, significant, I would dare say the vast majority of them were not included in the PPP efforts that help keep some businesses afloat. Probably the fastest I've ever seen the federal government act, I might add, which was a good thing. It just didn't come with I think the oversight that would lend itself to the something that would make us all that much more comfortable. But we're talking about an economy that's contracted significantly in the second quarter, GDP down 4.8% in the first quarter, record amount of borrowing, $3 trillion at least in the first act, and probably whatever they hammer out in DC, another several $1 trillion worth of debt, probably the first time in recent memory where our national debt will exceed our GDP and dramatically so. It's not clear how small businesses and entrepreneurial businesses will fare in the near future, so I think that's also going to require some significant focus. I'm worried about our restaurants. I'm worried about a number of our homegrown businesses. I don't think that everyone should have to go and shop at a national credit tenant every single day. So that probably sounded somewhat like a stream of consciousness, but there are a number of different positive conversations going on about how we use limited resources to determine the way forward, and that's part of what the Commission on Columbia's Future is going to be focusing on.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I promise the answer won't be as long to this question.
So one of the things you mentioned is how the pandemic has basically been an X-ray into our society and socioeconomic disparity. So, I mean, one simple example is the fact that, we talk about trying to minimize your shopping, going once a month buy everything. You have to have enough money in your bank account to be able to do that. If you're, living week to week, you can't do that. Obviously, all the resources that schools provide, some families are better able to absorb the cost of that than others. Childcare, meals, all this stuff. So I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on what things we're doing specifically to help those most vulnerable families that are most significantly impacted financially by this situation.
Sure. Well, thank you. The Pew Research, and many of you have heard the statistic quoted. It's fairly regularly quoted. Now, we were part of the research study that they conducted just a couple of years ago in partnership with the Aspen Institute, looking at the issue of income volatility. The reality is that even in this world in which we live, this gig economy, that some people still have the jobs of yesterday, where you actually got a salary, you had benefits attached to that and everything else, but the world's very different now. I mean, even if you look at the number of people that in Eastman Kodak, those of us who are my age and older remember, although Eastman Kodak had a bit of a comeback last week, Kodak did at least, that the number of people employed by Eastman Kodak in 1963 versus Facebook at the same revenue scale just 7 years ago, Eastman Kodak had 10 times the number of employees. The number of people who are working now in the gig economy, in which they may earn $300 this week, $1,000 the next week, $200 the next week, but the same bills are due every single month. That the average family does not have $400 in savings to help them take care of an unanticipated expense. Those challenges were there before the pandemic. And have only been exacerbated since the pandemic. And that's why even some people, and I've enjoyed watching the discussion in Washington, D.C. to hear people who don't normally agree on the macro issues of the economy to actually at very least agree that we've got to take this data, we've got to take these challenges, we've got to humanize it in some way and recognize that we've got to help people get through these most difficult times. There are a number of different ideas on the table, I will tell you that. We could use more as it relates to helping working families. A couple of things we are working on right now. There's some challenges that are not just about children, but also about the families that they come from that have access to broadband and Wi-Fi, so that people can more actively participate in the 21st century economy. There's a wonderful plan we're working on right now that would deliver Wi-Fi. We've been working closely with a number of different institutions. Some of you may know we've had a partnership with the Comet as you talk about food insecurity and the number of people as a number of traditional stores will shut down, making sure people have access to fresh food and vegetables. A wonderful partnership with the Comet that allows people, that gives people credits on Uber and Lyft, that allows them to take an Uber and a Lyft to the grocery store, a $5 credit to and fro, that we've seen 20,000 people uses of that over the last several months. I believe the answer is going to be ways in which we think aggressively and we work collaboratively to utilize technology in ways that we have not done before, and humanize these discussions in a way that actually tell people's stories that then allow us to put the resources behind them to make them happen. I do believe that now, in the world in which we live, that only seeking public financing of these types of efforts doesn't work anymore. I think it needs to be a very thoughtful, public-private, philanthropic approach to solving some of these very complex problems. I do think that a city our size also lends itself to some experimentation, some ideas that might not make as much of a difference in a small town and might be impractical in a large metropolis. So we're going to be playing with a few other ideas in addition to the ones that I mentioned.
As you know, a lot of cities are really kind of blown up with violence and everything. And I know one thing, I don't know if everybody knows it, but I know this, I'm Italian in background. And you decided to wrap up Christopher and put him in storage, and for that we're all grateful. You're the hero of the Italians in this area. But what other things, why do you think you didn't have this violence, continual violence? What do you think, looking back, what decisions do you think you made that were good? And that you, like, do you have a good relationship with the police here? Or tell me about how all this works, because we didn't have what other communities have, and we were grateful.
I have a fantastic relationship with our Chief Holbrook. He's a dear personal friend, and I do believe that between Skip Holbrook and Leon Lott, and I throw Jay Coon in there as well, we have some of the very best law enforcement professionals the country has to offer right here in the Midlands. They work very aggressively to build community ties. They invest in community policing when things seem to be going okay, and they have to obviously very carefully always balance their roles. They're public guardians, and occasionally they have to be warriors. I mean, we still live in a world in which you need good, solid law enforcement. They have never been, and I speak to the chief almost every day. There's rarely 2 days that go by in which we're not literally bouncing ideas off each other, just ideating and thinking about different ways in which we can make the community safer. It's not only about making law enforcement stronger, it's how do you make the community safer. And that takes thoughtful, strategic investments. Because I will tell you, as many of us, we're all human, we all have challenges, we all have challenges in our own families. We all have situations in which people may suffer from some type of mental health challenges, what have you. It's rare that the right answer to a situation of crisis is for a stranger with a gun to show up. Usually, cops have to show up to enforce the law. And it's so important, and what we tried to do over the last several years, and certainly, we did have our day in the sun on May 31st, I might add, okay? It's important that we spend as much time as possible humanizing one another, recognizing that all of us carry our stories, we all carry our challenges, we all carry our bad experiences, and that those challenges are very unique for several individuals, depending on where you grew up, how you grew up, oftentimes the color of your skin, and humanizing folks at the very same time, helping people realize that in that blue uniform is also a human being. And how do we begin to tap into and speak to our collective humanity in a way, again, that brings people together, doesn't separate people. We had an incredibly peaceful protest that I showed up at early on, passed out masks and passed out water. And by the time we got to the afternoon, we had a full-blown riot in our hands at our Columbia Police Department. The sheriff on site, the chief on site. I was able to get there in time to survey the situation at its worst. And I do believe, and this is in the wake of several days in other cities of seeing the very worst of society on display, that the decision to shut things down and to go into full law enforcement mode and to issue a curfew and to clear the streets of the city played a huge role in helping to preserve the city, helping preserve life, helping preserve the properties and buildings that people have invested in for years to try and participate in the American economy. But then we had to take it the next step. After telling people to take their butts home, and that's a whole other story. I got a call from my pastor about that one. I'll tell you about that offline. I went to the State House a day or two later and sat with the protesters, and really just began a conversation that started with, tell me why you're here, tell me your stories. We don't spend enough time talking to each other. We spend so much time yelling at each other, telling people, I wear this banner while you wear that banner, I'm red, I'm blue, and so often we don't speak to each other. So those constant conversations, there are some of the early protesters, none of whom were at the police department that day. I literally speak to and involved in some of the decision-making processes almost every day. I speak to our chief every day. I think it's just constant communication, recognizing our common humanity, recognizing that we're in this together, and that's the only way we're going to get out of this. So we still have a ways to go. I mean, America has got a significant way to go, but I still believe this is the greatest nation in the history of the world. I do, and we've got a lot of work to do. And I think it's going to require us to constantly collaborate. Thank you all. God bless you all. Stay healthy. All right.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you being here today. You know, somebody who's gone to the university here and in law school and lived here for such a long time, I think you recognized, when you didn't see some faces that you recognized, you told them, you're not from around here and it's time to go home. Appreciate you being here and being a defender of Columbia for us. Here's a little gift from the Columbia Rotary Club. Thank you.
I will say this, the call I got from my preacher was when I told folks, take your life home. His answer was, his word was, if the word is in the word, then you can say it. But if it's not the word, you can't. So apparently I guess, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, President-elect, thank you again, Steve. President-elect Catherine Davis, who do we have come to speak with us next week?
We will have Captain Jim Bingham. Bingham is his last name. He is an international airline pilot, and he chairs the association, the International Airline Association, Airline Pilots Association. Gosh, I can't get that out today. But anyway, but he should bring some really interesting lessons he's learned as an international airline pilot. So please come and learn some lessons.
Do we want to announce who's going to introduce that speaker yet? Do we want to hold that as a well, I know, but I don't know if we're allowed to say yet. We might have a special introducer for that speaker next week.
Yes, there's a request out for that, so I don't want to ruin it.
All right, well,
There's a
stay
special
tuned for
request
that.
as an honorary, well, not an honorary, it's one of our members, actually, one of our members who's, I guess they're friends with this pilot, and anyway.
Okay,
Almost
stay
there.
tuned. Come next week, bring
Yes,
friends.
yes.
All right, Rusty will take us out with song.